Have you figured out how you're going to do your introduction?
I think I want to do like just something short and sweet and simple.
Like, it's your girl.
So the funny thing is, I kind of want to remember I told you about changing my brand a little bit, and on brand is your girl. Like that's who I am. So I changed my Instagram from chef. I've changed a couple things up because obviously that's always been who I am.
Sure.
So now I want to, and I'm your girl. Like that's it. Like that's what they know me as.
Your girl.
My license plate actually in Vegas was your girl, and I used to drive around. I had my Honda Civic, and
Oh my
nice
God.
car. I love that car. So I used to drive around. And I would hear people like, yeah, girl. And I'll beep or I'll put because everybody in Vegas has personalized license plates.
Okay.
So it's like a thing. So I actually have it now on my bedroom wall. Like I kept it when
That's
I
so
switched
funny.
cars.
Your girl.
It's your girl.
It's your girl. All
and
right.
it's GURL, of course.
Oh, yeah. You
because
can't be GIRL.
girl. And it was taken.
It's
so.
your girl. All right.
It was taken.
So my podcast queen, kick us off. What are we talking about today?
All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Janelle, and this is Don't Panic, You're Healing. I'm joined here with Martina, and today we're going to talk about healing.
Thanks so much for having me, Janelle. When you reached out to me about what this podcast was meant to be and how you wanted to highlight the healing journey, the ups and downs, the hurts, the joys, the happiness, all of it through people's collective stories, I thought that it would be a beautiful way for me to actually continue in my own healing journey by talking about my pain and my hurt, just in hopes that if someone else is also going through that this would be, a light on their path, that they could see that it does get better and you do heal. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, that was beautifully put. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Actually, thanks for having me, because this is your place. So it's really awesome that we could do this and, have some fun.
This is just my debut on MTV Cribs, actually.
I've enjoyed it immensely. So.
Well, thanks for being here.
So yeah, the reason we're all here, and that's to talk about healing. So thank you so much for allowing me to come into your house, and let's do this.
Yeah, let's pop off. Here we go.
So I want to explain a little bit about, why I started this podcast, and that was to bring an awareness to healing and what that really means. I've been in therapy on and off since I was 14, and I wanted to show people that, healing is a journey. It is not something that's linear. It's not something that, you're just going to get to this point of this, I'm just healed.
Yeah.
And, people tend to think it's a misunderstanding that it's like a fairy tale. Like I start this journey, I go to therapy, and boom, one day I'm just going to be.
It's all going to feel so good to heal. Yeah.
When in reality, a lot of times the healing journey could be much more painful than the actual trauma yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you have to come face to face with your trauma. When you're living the trauma, I think your body and your mind just protects you a little bit, and you don't realize the trauma is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start healing from it, and it like tears you open almost to start rebuilding all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts, that tearing in.
And you're almost in this fight or flight mode. So you don't have you're almost in this fight or flight mode that you don't have the ability to really see what's going on around you and feel those feelings as when you're sitting with a therapist and talking about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. I don't know where I'd be without my therapist at this point, because for so much of my journey, it's been, like you said, fight or flight. And unfortunately, I have always been more on the flight side. But even when you're doing flight instead of fight, you still, like you said, you don't feel. You're not feeling what's going on actually in your body until you sit with your therapist, and it just starts. Then you start bawling for about 53 minutes of your session.
And then it's like, a lot of times too, people think I'm just going to get to, I tend to think that, I get to this point, I have to call my therapist like, oh my God, everything's crashing around me.
Yeah.
She's like, well, this is what we prepared for. This is, you're going to always grieve something. You're going to always be, in a state of like waves. Healing is an emotional roller coaster, and it just brings you this waves of hurt and happiness over and over again.
It really does. Yeah, that's a beautiful way of saying it. Hurt and happiness. And it just sort of oscillates between the two. And when you're in the happiness, it's kind of like, this is going to sound crazy, but I think it'll resonate with you and everybody who's been on a healing journey. But when you're in the happy phase of the hurt cycle, or the healing cycle, you're always kind of just like a little nervous. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop because you know hurt is on the other end.
Yes. Like, you could be one day just living your best life, traveling through Thailand, life is good. And next thing you know, a week later, you're at home bawling your eyes out on the way to work. And you're just like, where did this come from? And now I have to go to my job.
Yeah.
And,
There.
I think a lot of people can relate to that because, a lot of my friends, I'm like, I didn't know you cried like that. And she's like, I didn't know you cried like that. I'm like, I cry every day.
I didn't know I cried like that until I started crying every day on my drive to work. And
Yeah.
I was like, it had nothing to do with work. But, your body just like has these moments where it can't take it anymore. And it's like the release,
Yes.
it's like catharsis. So, okay, walk us through some of like, what is it that inspired you to do this, to talk to everyone about healing, to open up and kind of bore into your soul and your healing and your hurt, for everyone to hear and see? Like, what inspired this?
That's a really good question. And I think it was my last time in therapy to where I was like, I think other people need to know this. And
Yeah.
just talking to my friends and things like that, it was just like, wow, we all are actually going through similar things in different ways. Obviously not the same experiences and things like that. And I've always been a huge advocate for therapy since I can remember. So for me, it just was a kind of like a no-brainer. Like, it felt more like some sort of calling, I would say. I've had
Yeah.
dreamed since I was young of, just reaching people with my story and things like that. And as I went through my 20s, my story got a little bit more complicated and a little bit more. So I'm like, okay, why not give this a try and see if, this resonates with somebody.
And these people have no idea about the journey they're about to embark on. Chef Janelle worked for celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay and has had an entire life that is so interesting and full of some really wild stories. And I think people are going to really enjoy hearing about that and just hearing how you came out of certain situations and some misfortunes in your life.
Don't forget Mariah Carey, of course.
Yeah, you have to tell them as the episodes go on about her Mariah Carey story.
It's funny. But yeah, I think for me, I've always really connected with talk therapy ever since I was a little kid. And, your friends are also a form of therapy. How many times have you called your friend over and over again about the same situation?
I have like 4 friends on rotation that I call my
Easily.
pseudo-therapist every day.
Every single day. And and especially as women and things like that, it's so important. Another thing for me too is as this process goes on, and I want to make it more appropriate, as I guess to say that everybody can do therapy. Old, young, male, female, everything you're going through.
Middle Eastern, you hear that, mom and dad? You too can go to therapy.
Like, I want to break down that stigma that, people have, and they still have. And people say, oh, we're in 2026, you should accept these things and blah, blah, blah. But it's not so easy for someone who was raised as a Black man in society who doesn't feel like they can talk to people.
Yeah. Oh, that's an absolutely great point. Or people who have been shamed about their feelings and their hurt. And so the supposition is that a therapist or someone else is just going to make it even more shameful that you have these feelings and these struggles.
Yeah. So, I just really want to share my story and hope that helps at least one person as the time goes on, because throughout my years, I remember my therapists all the way through. And, I've done a lot of, and I want to make it known that just because you're in therapy for a year doesn't mean you have to be there for your lifetime. It is something you can stop and start.
That's absolutely correct. I think there are seasons to it, just like a lot of things. You have people like me who go every single week, and then you have people who, I don't know. Like, what's your therapy maintenance looking like? Is it like once a month, twice a month?
For me right now, it is once a month, sometimes once every other month. And we just do that for maintenance because at this point, we've cultivated a relationship.
Exactly.
It's nice to keep in touch. It's nice to have that, like, okay, if things are going, and if things are going wrong, it's like, okay, I have that. But
it's nice to, like, I think it's important for people to know and understand that this is part of the healing journey, right? You have 2 people here who are on opposite ends of healing, but still committed to going to therapy and relying on outside resources to really get us there. I'm, like I said, I'm going once a week, so we get where I am on my journey. But
Yes.
you're going, I consider you maybe further along on your journey and still dedicated to maintaining even that once a month contact. It's really important because it just goes to show healing doesn't stop.
Yeah.
You don't ever really just stop. It's a constant effort to keep healing.
And, my therapist reminds me too, is like, things are going to come up, like in general, like you're going to go through new things. You're going to, realize new things about yourself
Yeah.
through this journey because you're changing and you're like, wait, what? We went through all of these things and I didn't even know this was an issue. So now let's talk about this.
Oh my God. The number of times, it's like a light bulb moment.
Yep.
And you're like, what? Ding, ding, ding. I figured it out.
So it is important to just, have that safe space. And that's, what I always say to people when I tell them that it's time to go to therapy, or when I suggest therapy to them, I always say, it's like a diary you can talk to and that talks back. And they're not putting things into your head. It's not this, they're giving you this advice that you should do. They walk you through how to get there on your own.
Yeah.
So, and nobody needs to know anything. So this is between you and that person and nobody ever knows. So
Absolutely.
I think it's a lot of what people tend to be afraid of is the unpacking, which is understandable.
Unpacking is something. Yeah, it hurts. Oh, from vacation, from my emotions, unpacking it all.
Yeah.
So, shall we start unpacking?
Sure. Let's get it. I know a little bit about your past and everything that you your journey that you've been through.
Sure.
So what I want to talk about is your parents and growing up in a religious household and how that was for you. If you wouldn't mind telling us like what your religion is and what your parents.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in Egypt. I'm 100% Egyptian. My family is 100% Egyptian. My parents are Coptic Orthodox Christians, which is basically the Egyptian version of Greek Orthodox or like Russian Orthodox or what have you. But the emphasis here is that they're Orthodox Christians. And I think for anyone who like understands world religions knows orthodoxy tends to come with is like synonymous for very conservative.
Yeah.
So I come from a very conservative Christian Middle Eastern household.
Wow.
And I date women.
All right.
Done, done, done. So, I think anyone who understands the dynamic there could understand exactly what it was like growing up.
Yeah.
I didn't have a life that was quote unquote normal for an American kid. I didn't go to camps. I went to church only camps.
Wow.
I didn't have friends come over the house or that I went over their house. I went to my church friends' houses or they came to my house, but I never really interacted with anyone who wasn't part of my family's church community.
Wow.
And I don't even mean, church could be Catholic or any other religion. Nope, it had to be my parents' church. The Middle Eastern Coptic Orthodox Church was the only place that was like the center of our household. And, I think I knew from a pretty young age, my first sexual experience or relationship generally was in high school with my female best friend, And I think that I should have known at that time that I, am gay. But when you grow up in that kind of environment and in that household, it's not just that you like can't be gay or whatever. It's strictly forbidden. It is the black sin, the one that sends you to eternal damnation. You can't be gay.
Yeah.
And I grew up being told that time and time and time again, so much so that I didn't even realize that I had internalized homophobia until I started to really come out in my 30s.
Wow.
And, I had experiences and relationships with women in between that time and just continuously was shoving myself back in the closet because I, in some capacities, believed the things that my family and that my religion were telling me, which was that I couldn't be gay. Marriage was between cis man and cis women, and we had to make a bunch of little babies, and that my job on earth was to do that.
Wow. And it's funny that you say that because for me, my own experience is, I come from a different family. We're very open. My mom was young and, my grandparents are like my parents and I have my aunt. And my journey on coming out was a little bit different. I came out when I was 21 and everybody had said to me, they're like, well, why'd you wait? Like your family would have been so cool about everything. And I'm like, well, it wasn't about them. It was about me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't comfortable with being gay.
Why?
I wasn't comfortable with, and you know what? I do get asked that as well. And I don't know. I don't know why I wasn't fully comfortable. I knew I was going to be different. And I knew that was just hard to navigate. I didn't have any support in that area. So it was just like, I liked girls nobody else I knew did. And I didn't know how to handle that. And I struggled with a lot of different things in high school as well. So I think that kind of took precedent over, fighting these feelings and really navigating that.
Totally get that.
So
Yeah. You never want to be the different kid in class because no matter what, you're going to get bullied relentlessly.
well, that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It just wasn't an option for me to even accept that. I hid. You say you have experiences with your high school best friend. Like, I refused. For me, it was quite opposite. I wanted to prove something to the world and to myself that I wasn't.
Yeah.
So I did the opposite. I just kind of got with more guys at that time.
Try to convince yourself that you like them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Been there.
for me, I obviously know a little bit about you. And for me, I decided that when I was 16 years old, I had I'm staring up at the ceiling and I'm like, you know what? My life is going to go like this. I'm going to marry a man and I'm going to have some kids. And then by the time I'm 30, 31, I'm going to come out of the closet. And it's so funny to think about that now because I'm actually that age. So it's like, wow, we made it.
We didn't have to marry the man. Good for you.
But it was so, that was it for me. And the only reason I did come out at that time was because I was struggling. It was almost like I was forced to come out.
Yeah.
I forced myself to come out because I came to a point where, I was grieving the loss of my cousin and it completely consumed me. And I was fighting these feelings for so long that it got to a point where it was, it's do or die.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
So,
you felt like you were maybe like at the crux of something.
oh yeah.
And to save your own life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it just, I suffer from depression heavily. So with that, I was in this never ending purgatory,
Yeah.
so to speak. So, it was just constant trying to grieve properly on top of trying to hide who I was. So I made a plan and I stuck to the plan and I told everybody and I came out at different times.
Which is so amazing because you made this plan when you were 16 to get married, have kids, and then come out when you were 30 or 31. And I lived your plan. I had zero plans of ever coming out, but I lived your plan. I got married. I didn't have the kids, although I did, my ex-husband and I did get pregnant. I had a miscarriage, but we didn't, but that was the plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
we got married, we got pregnant, time to have the kid. And ultimately, I came out when I was 31. And it was just like such an interesting, it's so interesting that like you have this plan and it didn't come to fruition. And I didn't have this plan and it came to fruition for me. And yet here we are at the same time, at the same place, sitting here being very comfortable and very confident in our sexuality.
Yeah.
But the road to getting here was so bumpy for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with your ex-husband?
Sure, it was tricky in a lot of ways. My ex-husband was from my community. He is Coptic Orthodox Christian. He's Egyptian, and he checked off all of the things on the paper. He's a surgeon. He on paper was a great match for my family. So when I met him, of course, I didn't think about anything other than this would make my family super proud. And there's always this innate desire to please your family for whatever reason. There's something about having them be proud of you that for whatever reason for me felt like success.
Yeah.
My parents were proud of me and were happy with me. Then I was doing all the right things. When they were mad at me, I was failing. And that's the household I grew up in. And I would think a lot of Middle Eastern conservative households are like that, especially.
I think a lot of people can relate.
Yeah. Oh, especially in the immigrant communities. I'm
Yeah.
looking at you, my Southeast Asian friends. Like, they've probably experienced more or less of the same. So when I met him, I didn't even really think much about it because on paper it was great.
Checking the boxes, like you said.
Checking the
Yeah.
boxes. So ultimately, when I did come out to him, he was mostly confused. I don't think he really understood. I think it took him some time to wrap his mind around what I was telling him and to fully accept and digest it, and it was a really painful time in my life. Probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do because it's really hard watching someone's face sort of transform before your eyes as you tell them that this life and this plan that they had for their future with you, which
Yeah.
very much revolved around you, was suddenly crumbling because you were not who they thought you were.
Yep.
There were obviously a lot of bumpy parts in it, a lot of arguments, a lot of fears, concerns that he was going to out me to my family, a lot of lashing out. But ultimately, I do, in a lot of ways, feel a lot of sympathy for what his experience must have been, hearing his wife at the time tell him, I need to be with women.
Yep.
And him realizing this whole plan and this whole future that he's prepared for was suddenly pulled out from under him.
And can you tell me a little bit about where your relationship is now with him?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really communicate, that we don't
Course,
have
of
any
course.
reason to, but it's one of those things where it ultimately ended cordially enough that if I were to call him up right now, he would be confused but not
Cool.
upset. I think
And I think that shows to his character, and that's a huge, testament to the type of person he is. Because I think there's a lot of people who are afraid or who are in relationships and they are afraid that their partner is going to react in a way that is terrifying. That is, it can be dangerous
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it really can be dangerous depending on their partner. And
financially, mentally, physically.
fortunately, yeah, I didn't have any of that because I didn't rely on him financially.
Of course.
Physically, no, he would never, but mentally, there were some challenges. Yeah, there were times where he would lash out and threaten to out me to my family just out of anger.
And
And
it's understandable, not that he would do that, but it's understandable that he would have those feelings.
I understand his anger,
Yes.
in the moment. And I, for all intents and purposes, have absolutely forgiven him for that.
Yeah.
But, it was definitely not an easy transition. And, it's interesting. There's a lot of sorrow in my mind and in my heart about that time. But there's also a lot of elation and freedom that I remember.
Yeah.
I remember coming alive after I told him that I wanted to date women.
It sure.
Was a really strange and dark experience, but I remember feeling so free.
Yes.
That now I was going to go out there and I was going to get to experience what I'd been dreaming of, like the affection, the love, the touch of a woman, and seeing if it really resonated in the way that I thought it was going to.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. And that I'm happy you were able to get that experience. I want to circle back a little bit to your parents. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about religion itself and, where you are as far as we know how your parents feel and
Sure.
things like that. But coming out must have been hard for you to face spiritually. Like, where was your relationship with your God and how you felt? Did you feel like God hated you? Did you ever have those feelings of, I'm not going to be accepted into heaven?
Yeah, part of the reason I think it took me so long to come out, or to at least even accept my sexuality, was because of those very fears. Like I said earlier, I grew up in a religion where there is a hell, and hell is painted as a very painful, dark place. And when you're taught that as a kid, you grow up believing it, right? It's almost like Santa. If any kids are
That's
watching
hilarious.
this, please turn it off.
It's hilarious.
But you grow up and you believe in Santa until someone tells you that Santa is not
Yes.
real. I grew up in a closed community where nobody told me that Santa was or wasn't real.
Yeah.
It was
This is all you know.
this is it. This is Santa, So I believed it for most of my life. And there were times where I may have questioned it, but I didn't grow up again in a household or a culture where women question things.
Yeah.
It's just not what you
yes.
do. And it's so hard to explain that to people because they look at me and they see this woman, they're like, Martina, you're a lawyer and you're so
Strong,
outspoken.
independent.
Right. And they can't believe it. And dare I say, some of them even might call bullshit on it and say, there's no way you believed it. There's no way you didn't question it. There's no way you didn't stand true to your own feelings.
Mhm.
And the reality is, that's exactly what happened.
And the misconception is you're a completely different person now than you were then.
Couldn't be further from who that was.
So you may have not felt what they see now is not the version that was in that place.
At all. And that's such a beautiful way of saying it. I don't know that I would recognize that Martina now. I didn't have a backbone. I didn't question things. I just blindly obeyed because that was safety to me. I so desperately grew up in my life needing two things: safety and acceptance. And that wasn't always available in my household. My parents had their own struggles in their own lives. They'd lost 2 children. They weren't really involved in my life for quite some time. I was heavily bullied in high school
Wow.
for being, an overweight, girl who people outed as gay for hooking up with her best friend, and I was bullied relentlessly,
Wow.
engaged in self-harm. I had done a lot of things that my parents have absolutely no idea about till this day, and they just weren't present to really ask and talk about it. So I, for the duration of my life, even till now, crave so much to be loved, accepted, and like safe in what I was. And so not pushing back on the beliefs that were instilled in my household was safety.
Yes.
That was getting I got the approval I craved, the safety, dare I say the love was conditioned on my
Hiding
not.
and almost
Exactly.
disappearing into
Exactly.
that. I want to say I'm really sorry that that's happened to you, and I think
Thank
that's
you.
important to share because there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us in our community that do go through those things, and I think it's important that you share that because to see where you've come now is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because it just because you're going through that in the moment, it's horrible and it hurts, but it doesn't mean you can't come out of it and be, the exceptional person that
Yeah.
you are.
This thank you. That's very sweet. I definitely do have a lot of work to do on myself, and
It's never ending.
it's
But
never ending. Even a year ago, I wasn't who I am now, and I hold a lot of shame sometimes in my mind and in my feelings about who I was, even like I said, even up until a year ago. But there's a lot of parts of me that are just like proud of that little girl who was
yes,
getting bullied and silently crying in her bedroom every night, that her life got so much better. And all she needed was some confidence. And the only way to get there was to be true to herself. And that
hmm
didn't just include my likes and dislikes and my friendships and my beliefs, it included my sexuality.
and I think everything you're saying right now is exactly why we're here, and that's healing. And what you did and what you said just now is you healing, and coming out of something that was so almost shaped you in a way. And I think that has made you stronger. And every experience that you have been through has made you who you are today.
Yeah, it's like the concept of being forged through fire.
hmm
I needed to be forged through fire, unfortunately. And so, in a lot of ways, I look back and I think, I wish that I had family who accepted me. I wish that I didn't come from a conservative religious background. There's a lot of I wish, I wish, I wish. And I think a lot of those things, had they been true at the time, I'd be a different person now.
Yeah.
And who knows where I'd be? Maybe I'd be better off, maybe not. I don't know. But I needed to be forged through fire to learn myself.
I just want to say, thank you, thank you for everything, like sharing that and stuff like that. I know
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's hard.
Thanks for receiving it.
I want to talk about, where you are with your parents now and how your relationship has changed with not only them, but, the religion aspect and things like that. Like, I'm sure that they struggle a little bit with, them, probably a lot, but, I do know that you still speak to them and, that's a huge fear as well.
I haven't we're not at the point of, no contact or anything like that, but it's been a bumpy road. I can't say that my relationship with them is very strong, but, you know, there have been comments made even as recently as a month or so ago of my parents telling me things like they believe in conversion
God.
therapy, that, you know,
Can you explain a little bit what that is?
my understanding of conversion therapy is going to some sort of religious therapy that basically conditions you to believe that you're not a homosexual. And unfortunately, there's a lot of studies on conversion therapy wherein the participants ended up ultimately taking their lives.
Mhm.
The suicide rates for conversion therapy participants, excuse me, were quite high, proving that, it doesn't work. But my parents are on far right YouTube watching these folks getting on YouTube saying, "Yeah, I've had conversion therapy and it scared the gay out of me." And they believe it's a mental illness. Like, there's a lot of work that
Yes.
they need to do to get there. But we're also a lot better at boundaries now. I've
Wow.
had conversations with them about, I'm not willing to speak to you on the phone or see you or talk to you if this is the substance of it. Um, I've had conversations with them pretty frankly about, if this is how you choose to navigate our relationship, you know, in future situations, with my partner or whomever, if we're not gonna come to you for holidays, if you're not going to accept this. And just being very clear and setting the expectations from now that this is what life will look like. And so a lot of the times our conversations leave basically the ball in their court.
Yes.
And I let them kind of handle it the way they want to, with the understanding that once that boundary is breached, I have no problem cutting the line because I've had to cut the line.
Yes.
I've had to pull back. I've had to not talk to them sometimes. And it's been painful because I don't relish in doing that. Nobody wants to hurt their parents. And I'm mindful of the fact that my parents, with the limitations in which they grew up in a Middle Eastern country, without resources, without the things that we have now, fully believe and go to bed every single night with sorrow that their daughter is going to hell. They really believe that. And I think it breaks their heart because they just want me to not suffer. They want me to not suffer, and they don't know. Certainly their approach isn't appropriate, but that's, I think, what they feel deep down. And I'm, in a strange way, I feel sorry for them. Like, I get it. If I was a parent and I really believed that, I would feel sorrow.
What people don't realize is that when you grow up a certain way, when you are a part of something that you have, almost like with you, like your parents had taught you everything.
Yeah.
And with them, they're from Egypt. They're from this place this is all people believe.
It's all they know.
Think about their parents and think about all these things. And I think it's just really sad. I feel for your parents because, of course, it's 2026. Everyone has this misconception that everybody should just be okay with things.
Yeah.
But how could you change, something that they've believed in their entire life? And, your mom lays down every night and truly thinks that her daughter is going to hell. And that's a horrible feeling.
Oh, I feel so much like, I don't know if sympathy is the word, but I really feel bad for them.
Yeah.
That they grew up in a society, in this closed community, without questioning things, without exploring, without kind of going outside of the bounds of what they've been taught, such that it's led them to now put their head every night on their pillow with tears in their eyes, believing that their daughter is going to hell.
That's that is sad. And
It really is, you never want to feel that way.
And it's not their fault, so to speak, because of the way that they were raised. But at the same time, I do think that it is, I'm not going to say I think it's great, but I think, the relationship that you guys are able to continue and to have, it's not ideal with your boundaries and things like that, but it is, you still get to keep your parents in your life. And that's not true for everybody.
I was really afraid, actually, when I came out that my parents were going to ostracize me. That was my biggest fear, is that I would lose my family. And while it's not been easy, I'm so unbelievably grateful that that's not really the situation. They didn't end up ostracizing me. And, if I have to put up with a bunch of conversion video YouTubes being texted to me every day, yeah, I'll just ignore the text or delete them. But I'm at least appreciative that I didn't completely get shamed and ostracized. I know a lot of people don't have that experience.
Yep.
And even worse, some people have to experience lack of safety when they do come out.
Yes.
And I can't imagine how horrifying and terrible that must feel. And even more so, how much respect I have for people who come out in those circumstances. I feel put to shame when they come out in those circumstances.
I want to talk a little bit about your dad. How is it, because of obviously where you come from and the man and, how the household is set up, so to speak. Are you guys close in a sense? Are you further apart than when you were not out? Or are you, how is that? How has your relationship changed with your father?
Yeah, I haven't always had like the strongest relationship with my father, for a lot of complicated reasons when I was growing up. But I guess I would say I was pseudo closer to him when I was, heterosexual Martina, married Martina, because he at least approved of my life.
Yeah.
He looked at me and he saw lawyer, married to a surgeon, good family on both sides, good life. I'm doing all the things I'm meant to do. And he approved of my life then, which made the relationship less hostile.
Yes.
Now, I can't say that it's necessarily hostile as much as it is just non-existent. Some girls will go running and crying to their dads over heartbreak, but if a girl breaks my heart now, I can't really go running to my dad and being like, she broke my heart. It's oftentimes breakups right now, especially at this stage in my life, kind of hurt more for a lot of reasons, but mainly because I can't run to my parents and just sob
Yeah.
and have them be like, do the thing that parents do, right? When they tell you, like, don't worry about it, you're going to be great, and all of these things, and like cheer you up and take you out and distract you. And I have to rely on my friends, and God bless them. My friends in my circle know that they're my pseudo parents.
Yeah.
They're my family.
It's your support system. And that's what a lot of us have, whether you're, you know, gay or in the community or whether you're straight.
Yeah.
Our friends become our family. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. I want to talk about a little bit with your husband, your ex-husband, and getting into a new relationship. What was it like going from your ex-husband to now your ex-girlfriend? And how was living in between those lives? How did that affect you?
Well, in full transparency, Janelle, and I have to be very honest about it. I lived a double life in those situations, and I probably handled it the worst way someone could handle coming out and leaving their husband. Really, truly the worst way. And till this day, I still feel a lot of like shame and guilt over the way that I handled it. But I remember feeling really sad knowing that I was going to let go of him as my family, as my support system. He was the first person I ever really came out to, if you think about it.
Yeah. So you're grieving that relationship on top of now getting into a new relationship, and you are in between. This transition is
chaotic is a word that I have to use. I lived in a dichotomy of worlds, right? I was sad, but I was elated. I was mourning, but I was rejoicing. I was leaving an old life that I had known for 30 something years of my life. And now I was embarking on this new life that I never thought was possible for me. And
It's powerful.
it felt so unbelievably liberating.
Mhm.
But I was sad. Liberation, we all know, liberation comes at a cost, unfortunately. And it came at a cost, but, you know, I never looked back. Obviously, there's a lot of, like I said, I had a double life. I wasn't comfortable coming out to my parents at the time. So they had no idea when I left my ex-husband that I left him because of sexuality issues,
Wow.
as he would call it. But really what it was, like, he was the only one in my family who knew. And a lot of times I felt beholden to him because of that, because he held this power over me. That all he had to do was tell my parents, well, the reason we're separated right now is because she's a lesbian.
Wow.
And I was so terrified to my core about what that would do to my relationship with my parents, which at the time was good.
Yeah.
We were very close at that time. And I didn't want that to happen. And unfortunately, I hurt a lot of people in the process. I hurt him. I hurt my ex-girlfriend. I hurt a lot of people, and I lied to a lot of people because I just like couldn't get myself there. As much as people tried to support me and push me and help me, I've come to the very painful realization that when it comes to coming out, no amount of people pushing you to do it is going to get you there.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you, Janelle, is there were nights that I would be sleeping in bed with him sleeping next to me, and I'd be on my phone with my AirPods in, watching these like Instagram reels of women doing exactly this. Women in their
Very
30s
empowering.
saying, this is how I left my husband in my marriage, and this is what it took, and this is what was waiting for me on the other side.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine that. Just living in this, you're living in this prison, so to speak, inside your mind.
Yeah.
Laying next to somebody who thinks that, when they get up the next day, everything's going to be good. And that's a very empowering to know that you were watching other people's stories and knowing that it is possible.
It's the only thing that helped me, that and secretly, privately watching The L Word at night by myself. But they pushed me to understanding my own self better. The things that these women were saying, I was like, crap, that all resonates. Every single one.
And I think that's what I'm trying to accomplish here is, having a safe space for people to watch and to connect with, to say, hey, like, I can do that too. So, it just comes back to exactly why we're here. And that is, don't panic, you're healing.
Don't panic. It sucks, but you're healing. And it's beautiful.
Bouncing off that, I want to talk a little bit about, every day we live our lives. And a lot of times we spend more time with our coworkers and our friends than we do our families. So what was it like at work, coming out, and now all of a sudden you had a wedding ring on. Now you don't. You're might be dressing a little bit different. You might be a little bit more free. You have this air about you. I know you've had the same job for quite some time at that time. So what was it like one day to the next showing up to work a little bit different?
Coming out at work was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life.
Wow.
So I work at Subaru, which is really ironic. I sometimes wonder if people were thinking like, did Subaru turn into a lesbian, or did she just naturally gravitate to Subaru because she was a lesbian?
Makes sense.
No, when I started working at work, they met me as Martina, who had just gotten married, came off of her honeymoon, and there I was. And over time, obviously I stopped wearing my wedding ring, but I hadn't come out yet. And it wasn't until I wanted to start bringing my ex-girlfriend to things at the time, work events, meeting people, and like really.
So you didn't hide her, so to speak. You kind of embraced the transition.
Yeah, I knew at that point that I wanted to be out Martina, and I didn't want to not experience the fullness of dating and all of those things because of my limitations. And so I eventually came out to, my boss was one of the first people I came out to.
Very supportive.
Yeah, I have a great crew at Subaru, and it just goes to show it's a lot of testament to the culture and the people at the company. There were some people who were like maybe shocked, but never said anything negative, just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I would say an overwhelming majority of people that I spoke to and said, hey, yeah, no, sorry, no, there is no husband anymore. Actually, I'm with a woman now.
Wow.
They were so excited. People were hugging me. People were congratulating me. I had mentors at work who had been through the same experience, who had left spouses and came out later in life.
Okay.
And walked me through how difficult and painful that was. And I have one coworker, I would sit in her office, close the door, and sob my heart out about the fact that I was going through this transition and I was scared.
Wow.
And people really held me.
That's a beautiful thing.
Shout out to Subaru.
Hey, fun fact. A couple years ago was at the Haddonfield Pride. I didn't see you there. I walked in the parade. I had the time of my life.
You didn't need to see me there. I'm like the spokesperson for the company now. I'm a lesbian with a golden retriever. And what else do they need?
But maybe I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is a beautiful thing. And I think that's so important that at the time, you found community and a safe place at work. And not many people get that. And I think for you to have experienced that from where you came from at school and things like that, and being bullied through your life and all those things, I think it's a beautiful thing that you felt comfortable enough to come out as an adult and be in this, because sometimes work can be a high school, so to speak.
Sure. And it's a lot of testament to receiving and experience love and relationships in the way that you have always wanted to. I think that I was so empowered by having finally gotten to experience what real emotions were, what real intimacy was, because, my relationships with men weren't very intimate. You do the things that you do, but it didn't feel like I never felt connected. I never felt like I was connecting with this body in front of me, whether on a date or anything else. Even with my ex-husband, I didn't feel connected in that way. And then when I started dating my ex-girlfriend, a woman,
this whole new world.
Right. I finally started to experience what I had been craving, which was that connection with a woman. And it felt so alive in the moment that it empowered me to come out to my friends, to my coworkers. It empowered me to start dressing differently and expressing myself in a way that I had never expressed myself before. It was a beautiful experience.
It's amazing. And I'm so happy for you. And, I think sometimes what people tend to forget, and I know this is big in our community, is we are always coming out. No matter if you're starting a new job, no matter if you're meeting new people.
If you're at a bar, you're always having to tell someone, no, I'm a lesbian.
And you always come out. And it can be a little frustrating sometimes, for me at least, because it's like, why should I have to talk about this all the time?
Right.
But it's just the reality of, who we are. And how has that affected you?
In a way, it's become really fun now to just keep coming out. In the beginning, it was hard because it was constant practice. I would always feel like the pit in my stomach when I realized in that moment I was about to have to tell someone that I'm actually gay. And I hated it, but it's one of those things where it's like, trial by experience.
Mhm.
You keep doing it, it suddenly becomes kind of natural. And now, I'm pretty sure my friends look at me sometimes and they're like, "Shut up about being gay." But I love it. I love being like, "Excuse me, I'm a lesbian now," like I can say that because I'm a lesbian now. And it just feels so good. Now it feels natural.
That's awesome. It's beautiful.
And what was your experience like, out of curiosity, because you had to come out too at work, and I don't know if you were working for Gordon Ramsay at the time or where you were, but
So I was actually just starting culinary school at the time, and my life was in a very transitional phase. I had just lost my cousin, and I was moving to Las Vegas. So I was like, "All right, I'm going to culinary school. It starts in August." So in June, I decided to go. I went home in June for the summer, and I was like, "This is where I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell everybody each and every time." So first person I told was one of my best friends at the time, Daisy, and I just said it. And it was time. I said, "I'm going to do this. Like, this is insane." So I had told her, and I just immediately broke down. I was like, that was the biggest weight I've ever carried in my
Yeah.
life. And now I'm finally, and she was more my trial run, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't need to, if this doesn't go well, if I don't feel right, then we'll just wait. So I went home. The first day I actually came out to the public was July 4th. And I said, I'm not going to be here. So I took it as every single time I saw family members and friends, I would just say, "So I have something I have to tell you." And they'd be like, "Oh God, what?" Because that's typical me. Like, I can say anything at any time. And people are just like, "Dang, like, what is she about to tell
What's
me?"
she dropping?
And I would just say, "I'm gay." And that 50% of the people were like, "We know." And 50% were like, "Wow, okay, like,
That's
didn't
ama
see that
My
coming."
favorite is the "we know."
They're like, my aunt, she was like, "Oh, honey, like, I know this." Like, glad you now know. But
I remember when I posted an Instagram story, like, really officially coming out to everyone, like, on my there was a period of time, Janelle, and I'm ashamed to say it, but there was a period of time I, like, had to hide my Instagram stories from a lot of people because I
course.
didn't want them to know I was out yet.
Yeah.
And, then I finally did that, and my favorite was somebody from my high school, actually, who we didn't really kept in touch, but, like, peripherally on social media,
Of course.
was so supportive, but, like, hilariously responded back and was like, "Girl, finally, we all knew. We thought you knew too." I was like, "Nobody told me."
Yeah, and it was just like, it was very moving. And, there were a couple times, because at the same time, I'm still grieving the loss of my cousin. So it was very emotional throughout this. Not like I'm hysterically crying or
But it's still
anything,
emotional.
but
It's
there was
heavy.
so many emotions going on inside of me. And so my mom was finally like, she would try to hint at things through the years, and I would not talk about it. I would not speak about it. I would not, like, they tried. Some of them tried to get me out, but I wasn't ready at all. So when I had finally told her, it was a random time. She had just got home from going out with her best friend at the time, and we're sitting around the kitchen table. So I didn't make a spectacle about it, anything. I just, here's the moment. Like, I'm going to be going back to Vegas soon, and I want to go back there myself.
Authentically
Yes.
you.
So we're sitting around the kitchen table. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I said, "It's time." So I went downstairs and I said, "So got something I got to tell you guys." And like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm gay." My mom said, "I know."
That's kind of beautiful, actually. I love that that was her response.
And her friend is sitting across. She's like, "What? What are you talking about? What's going on?" And I was just like, trying to navigate both of these things in this contrast, one person
Sure.
one person not. And, my mom had always said she's known since I was about 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And, it was just not, it finally was the right time for me. And I went back to Vegas after, telling different people throughout. Overall, it was a great experience for me. I got the opportunity to sit my cousins down, who they have all known forever. What?
I want to say, I think it's actually really beautiful. And it's not lost on me that your mom knew since you were 4, and yet she never said a word. She never really pushed you one way or another. She kind of waited for you to come to terms on your own. And that's a beautiful way of letting someone really grow into themselves.
Yeah, it was because, like I said, there were little things here and there, but I never ever felt pressured. I
That's
never
amazing.
felt like, no, this is who you are and you need to talk about it.
That's awesome.
So when I say I really do have a supportive family, I do. And, I've never felt any type of rejection or any type of it. And it's crazy because I was rejecting myself.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible thing to,
We all do.
yeah.
Coming out, part of it is really just getting over the self-rejection.
Yeah. And,
Peace.
and I lived with that for so long. And at the same time, when I did come out, I kind of just moved past it like nothing ever happened. Okay, everybody's supportive. Let's keep moving. But I didn't realize at that time that I actually needed to get some therapy for that.
Yeah.
Which was, I'm living young, wild, and free. I'm 21. I just moved to Vegas. We don't need to do that right there and then. So it wasn't until this last stint in therapy over the last couple years where I really started to talk about it and really say like, dang, like I was this, how sad that I was this kid who sat in this room every night going through this and nobody knew.
Didn't want to be different.
Yeah. And nobody knew.
Well,
and
I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad that you came. I mean, we in the community are also happy you made that decision.
yeah. And I think it's important to, not kind of gloss over the fact that, oh, I'm out now, everything's good, because there was so much that leading up to that was painful and that was, just internalized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that stuff doesn't leave you just because you finally say the words. So now now I was navigating this world alone.
I had to deal with it.
Yeah. So I came out, I'm navigating, moving to a new city, meeting new people and telling them that I'm gay, which is fine. It's coming off regular. But at the same time, I didn't really have a community. I had the community of my friends at the time, but I kind of just went through the motions. And I think that really put me in a deeper place because I'm like, well, I don't have anybody to really talk to that I'm gay. I just moved to this new city, and especially not women. So eventually, once I started meeting people in the community, it was more guys. So, and obviously very supportive, some of my best friends through the years and things like that. So I never really had that community of lesbian support.
Oh, yeah. And community support is everything.
Yeah. So
it really is.
And I feel like even still to this day, a part of me, I wouldn't say that I'm hidden it by any means, but there is a part of me that still will always feel like I am hiding. And I think that's just from years and years of, being so hypervigilant that
Sure. Yeah.
I don't want to move a certain way. I don't want to talk a certain way because everybody's going to think I'm gay. And I don't feel that now, but I do feel, that residual effects of.
Sure. And that's why we say coming out is a continuous process. You are always coming out.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Sharing your story has been not only powerful, but I hope healing for you as well. And just to think about the people that we can touch through this experience is why we're doing it.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me and for really opening the doors on things that I usually keep bottled up because they hurt, but it's actually been pretty cathartic and healing to talk about it. And like I said earlier, I hope that if even one person hears it and it helps them come to terms with themselves and, understand that navigating this is messy. And if you didn't do it the right way, that's okay. I've come out on the other end of it. I'm happy. I'm dating. I'm enjoying my life now. And I'm so thrilled that this is where my life is now when it could have been very different. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I can't wait to hear the rest of your interviews and your guests on here. And, this is going to be a beautiful journey for everyone.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much for this.